Good evening. I have 5:30 p.m. I'd like to call the April 15th meeting of the bar to order. Uh, just a couple orders of business before we get to our first applicant. Um, our bar member Molly is not with us today because she has welcomed her new child into the world. So I wanted to congratulate her on that.
Boy or girl?
Girl.
Yay.
Yay.
She just logged
yep.
on, so you know.
Molly, congrats. Next on the agenda, I would like to make a public statement. Fellow residents, the mayor has made a second attempt to remove me as bar chairman. He has falsified documents to show my 5-year term ending in 2026 versus 2028, and, quote, instructed attorneys to do no further work on the issue of bar terms. This has been an ongoing issue first raised at the organization meeting, then subsequent BOD meetings. It began with Molly Gonzalez and Stephanie Rinza's appointments being switched. Now he is attempting to remove 2 years from my 5-year term by altering official documents a second time, unilaterally changing the Board of Trustees vote without their consent. Bar appointments have been added as an agenda item for this Wednesday's Board of Trustees meeting. As chairman, my correspondence to legal asking why their own documents have suddenly changed has gone unanswered because the mayor is attempting to pull a fast one behind closed doors. Luckily, at the November 6th bar meeting, I requested a memo from legal clarifying appointments. Their correspondence correctly lists my 5-year term ending 2028. What has changed? 2023 plus 5 years equals 2028, not 2026. On February 8th, Trustee Shaw indicated that the vote appointed Molly Gonzalez to the seat expiring 2027 and Stephanie Rinza 2024. The previous mayor has also communicated this to Mayor Citrin via email. In the interest of actual transparency, I have provided TPFYI with all correspondence, including the attorney's November 17th email clarifying my term ending 2028, and that the mayor has no authority to change the configuration of the bar. Should any resident wish, please email me and I'm happy to provide all documents for your review. In the interest of an open and transparent government, I request the Board of Trustees to post documents on the town website for public review. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that these are volunteer positions that dedicated members of this community give countless hours of their time to, solely for the betterment of Tuxedo Park. It is egregious that they continue to be harassed. The mayor's continued inappropriate behavior is an unacceptable abuse of his public office. It is a clear retaliation against those unwilling to bend the rules for sycophants. Cards on the table, Mr. Mayor, stop harassing volunteers behind closed doors and focus on the leadership and our shared community. Let's drop the drama and get on with leading. Thank you. And Darius, do we have you? I think he's mute. If you could unmute him.
Yes, you do. Hi. Hi,
Wonderful.
Ryan.
How are you?
Sorry, I was on mute and I couldn't
Quite all
find
right.
the mute. Good.
We
How are you?
Doing well, thank you. We haven't received communication from legal clarifying the bar appointment issues. Is there a reason for that?
I haven't been that close to it, Ryan. I know my partner Jared has been handling it, so let me reach out to him and we can circle back with you offline about it or at the next meeting. But I know he's been looking into it, not me.
Unfortunately, I haven't received a response offline, and this is pertinent as it's an agenda item on Wednesday's trustees meeting. So we need an answer before then.
Okay.
I would request that a memo is provided answering several questions. One, if you could please clarify what date I was appointed and what that end date would be. And if you'd like to answer any of these now and save us time, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any of the information in front of me, Ryan, but yeah, if you could run through your list and we'll respond to it.
Great. Second question, how long is the term for chairman? Third, why has it been changed from 28 to 26? And what procedure was followed? For clarification on your, let's see here, bear with me 1 second. November 17th, I have an email from your letterhead stating 2028 with all the bar appointments. Has anything changed from that? If so, please document that in the memo.
Okay.
Should anything have changed?
I don't know, Brian. I'm sorry. I'm in the car. I don't have all the information in front of me, but I'll definitely talk to Jared tomorrow morning. We'll get you a response tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. In the future, it might
Yep.
be helpful to be in person then if we're unable to answer questions or emails for several weeks. Thank you for your time. Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. First up on the agenda is Sophia Dellner. Actually, I'm sorry, before we do that, I'd like to open the room to public comment on anything before the bar today. Anyone in the room? Yes?
Chairman, member of the board. My name is John Sarcone. I'm an attorney from Sarcone.
Excuse me 1 moment. John, would you turn his mic on so Zoom can hear?
I can talk louder.
Thank you.
Very good. John, could you put that first? Hi, may I hand you the correspondence I had sent earlier and you may not have received it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thanks. So I'm speaking now because it's on the first application and I don't, hearing, so.
We generally take public comment now. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I submitted a quite detailed and lengthy correspondence questioning the board, but even entertaining this application. The town board has taken up the issue of perimeter fencing on, I believe it's Wednesday, next Wednesday. I lost track of the dates, this Wednesday, okay. So this Wednesday, and I attached in my letter the agenda, including on the back is, there's letter D and E for new business, including putting a 90-day moratorium for construction of perimeter fence. Perimeter fences are inherently offensive, and they don't exist. At least the one that's being proposed on this application, you could not find one in the entire village. In addition, there are various historic deed restrictions that are of a private matter, but they can be instructive for the Board of Architectural Review, because why would Peter, his first name Lorillard, your founder, put deed restrictions in when building this beautiful community here way back then? Well, I guess the reason is because they're offensive. And you're here to judge the design, I assume, and probably take no issue on the perimeter piece of it. But I can say this, we were before the zoning board recently, and the zoning board unanimously rejected an application for a deer fence and it was a perimeter fence as well. This application called it a deer fence. The argument was that they needed 8-foot high fences to keep the deer out. Now they're calling it a deer fence for 4 feet in one section, 6 feet in another. So I would hardly consider that to be a deer fence. There are least restrictive ways to keep deer away from vegetation, especially if you have expensive plantings. You simply have a fence around it. On a big property of 2+ acres, you can easily do that without putting up an offensive perimeter fence. The other point here is the building inspector, John, has got the title of building inspector. I did not realize did not have qualifications at this time. Recently took the civil service exam, waiting on the results. So we challenged at the zoning board meeting, his interpretation as to where the front of this house is. There's only one front to a house, and it's in the code. That's on a road. There's only two roads that lead to this house. One, West Summit Road, which goes to a private road that leads to the house, and the other on East Summit Road. That's it. There are no other roads. But yet, their application shows the front of the house being right there in front, where East and West Summit Roads adjoin on both sides. So that cannot possible. And I would ask that you consider that as well in this application. But more importantly, I think that it would be wise to defer, put this off at least until the town board meets. And I'm sure your counsel there would be able to guide you in that as well. So I would like to say that, I'm representing the adjoining property owners. Watsonians here. And it's something that has to really be carefully considered. So I urge you to push this off until such time as you are informed from the village board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your feedback. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I noted in this letter, at the letterhead, it says, "Letter to Honorable Ryan Lynch, Chairman." You said that you had sent this in to us, so this is the first time seeing it.
Yes.
I generally like to give informed feedback, and where was this sent?
I sent it to the village clerk, who's the receiver of public records, and I had asked her to distribute it. I also copied that. Did I copy you, John?
Yes, and I forwarded it to the bar around 4:30 this evening.
Okay, so,
So I apologize that I didn't get it in earlier.
not a problem. I'd like to review it. Generally, documents are in 10 days before we have the meeting, so I haven't had an opportunity to review this. Thank you for your feedback. And one other point I'd like to ask, in response, we generally handle the aesthetic component of this. I would advise that the appropriate venue for the concerns that you have raised would be the Board of Trustees meeting. This board only oversees aesthetic design within the design guidelines and relevant building code.
Sure, I get that, and I addressed that here as well. I mean, aesthetically, it looks like a fence that goes around a prison. In fact, there's a client of mine that's at a federal prison camp in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And I have to say that the fencing was almost identical to what they have around there. So, and I could get pictures next time if I get out there. So, yeah, I do address the aesthetics as well. And I look at the overall picture of what your guidelines say, and I quote your guidelines here. So the guidelines take into account many factors, not just the physical appearance of it, but how it will impact the overall environment of this beautiful community.
Thank you for your input. I will review this and get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone? Claudia?
I'm gonna distribute this, and this is the, this is in the hand of Pierre Lorelon, who, who wrote the initial deeds. And this is a 1992 deed from Pierre Lorelon to his daughter. And it's transcribed, the restriction is transcribed on the second page in the 1908 deed. And it says basically, and it is furthered, it agreed that no fences or fence shall be erected upon the premises hereby conveyed. That language was in all of the deeds that came out of Pierre Lorelon. Pierre Lorelon did not want perimeter fences. So I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds. And if we do erect deer fences, to make them as unobtrusive and aesthetic as possible. Anyway, I have a little, just a letter here. Dear Chairman, Ryan and esteemed members, of the Board of Architectural Review. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for taking the time to consider my input regarding the perimeter fence. It is a pleasure to reconnect with this esteemed board, especially as a founding member of the first independent BAR back in 2005. Alongside Paolo Tocci and Charlotte Worthy, we crafted the BAR guidelines that guide your decisions today. I was part of the first independent BAR, which, after a very long effort, we set up in 2005 to protect the aesthetics of the community. Paolo Tocci, Charlotte Worthy, and I all contributed to writing the BAR guidelines that are still in force today. So I feel deeply invested in upholding the founding principles of the BAR. As custodians of our community's aesthetics and integrity, it is paramount that we ensure harmony among materials and properties, even if not identical, that they should harmonize and rhyme in a certain way. Introducing new materials should be a thoughtful process to avoid setting precedences overly lightly. Once a precedence is set by the introduction of new materials, then everybody else can use that. In this vein, I respectfully urge the board and our community to have a first-hand look at the proposed materials for the fencing. Ask for a sample of the panels, the posts, the finials, the fastening mechanism. Ask for a sample of the actual fence. That's what we used to do. Throughout history, tangible samples have been essential, and I believe they remain so today. We physically need to see samples of materials being used in all of our projects in Tuxedo Park. Regarding the proposed materials, I must express concern. The fencing materials strike a discordant note, reminiscent of those found in industrial settings or in a correctional facility, rather than in our tranquil enclave. Their cheap, glossy finish would clash garishly with our natural surroundings, particularly under the summer sun. Furthermore, I must address some of the discrepancies in the applicant's submissions. While labeled as a deer fence, its specifications fall short of effectively deterring deer, as evidenced by the need for a taller fence. The misalignment between the job description and the actual intent warrants a review and correction of the building permit. Similarly, the designation of the front yard appears to have been chosen arbitrarily, in contrast to the clear guidelines outlined in Local Law 100-2. And I have that here for you, and I'll distribute it. Local Law 100-2. It's imperative that we adhere to these regulations to maintain consistency and fairness in our community. On her building application, the applicant chose willy-nilly which side of her house should have designations of being the front yard. And this is because a front yard is limited to a 4-foot high fence, and the side and backyards have a limitation of a 6-foot fence. However, Local Law 100-2 tells us with no uncertainty which side of the parcel is considered to be labeled as front. The front of the parcel is the part which extends from the building to the street line. In this case, the majority of the parcel is landlocked, but a street line does exist on the south side of the parcel. Local Law 100-2 does not mention or restrict in any way the length of the street line. Lastly, I implore Ms. Dalliner to consider alternative solutions that accommodate both her own needs and the concerns of her neighbors. A good number of her neighbors wanted to be here today, but they were not notified. And I did not receive a notification in the mail, and registered received requested. I know that 3 or 4 of the neighbors did want to be here, but made alternative plans. I would ask Ms. Dallin to reconsider alternative solutions. A 10-foot deer fence with a reduced perimeter may offer a viable compromise, preserving property values for the neighbors and the aesthetic harmony of Tuxedo Park. So I've asked her many times, reduce the perimeter and get 10 feet so you can have a property that's free of deer. I would like to see Ms. Downer obtain a 10-foot fence that would keep deer out of her property. From day one, we've been asking her to allow us to come to the table and find a solution that would be amenable to her and to all her neighbors as well. Unfortunately, she has repeatedly rebuffed our concerns. Unfortunately, a perimeter fence using materials proposed by the applicant would be materially detrimental to the value of our property and to the value of our neighbors' properties, and to all the other properties in Tuxedo Park, as once these materials, they were allowed, precedents for use of these materials shall have been set. In conclusion, I urge the board to prioritize the long-term well-being of our community by reevaluating the proposed materials and ensuring adherence to local regulations. Together, we can preserve the unique charm and value of our beloved neighborhood. Thank you for considering my thoughts and my opinion.
Thank you for your input. Just a point of clarification, John, neighbors were noticed via email
They were noticed via email and a letter that we sent to them.
and was legal copied on email?
I'm sorry?
Was legal CC'd on email?
I don't think so. I just notified the neighbors.
Okay.
Chairman, I'd like to approach the DSM.
Oh, sure, thanks.
Local law 100.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And also, I just read
Yeah, thank
long and boring.
you.
There you go, ma'am.
Thank you.
I don't have one for you. So, I took it in. Okay, so sorry.
Okay.
How much notice do the neighbors?
And that'd be a John question.
Oh.
John, Stephanie wants to know how long we typically give notice to neighbors.
Is there is it a 2-week notice that people?
No, the application and paperwork only has to be in 10 days before a meeting. So if I recall, my email went out. Best way to do this.
On the
I
8th,
believe the
right?
email was sent on the 8th.
On the 8th.
And then
Okay.
I followed up with a letter that I think was now on the 9th or the 10th.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. And is there a public comment for anyone on Zoom that wish to speak? No? Okay. Darius, one point of clarification too, just before we move on to public comment. There was comment made about John's capacity as building inspector. Could you please advise on that?
His capacity, can you be a little more specific? It was hard to hear.
Sure. I don't want to misquote anyone, but would you mind repeating what you said so I get it precise?
Hi, Darius. It's John.
Hey, John.
It was brought to my attention that John Ledwick had not taken, prior to his appointment, the civil service exam, but has taken it recently, but the results are not back. And I don't believe that he has the requisite qualifications because of that to be the building inspector. I mean, he has the title, he has the position. I'm not trying to be offensive to you, John, but, you know,
Well,
technically,
it feels a little offensive. to
I
me.
know it does, I know.
Because I think if you went so far as to realize that the test results had not been given, you should have at least looked into a little bit more of my background. I've been accepted by civil service interim pending a civil service test. So I can assure you my position is valid, and the board of trustees who appoint me are well aware of that.
Well,
Thank you.
I would
Thank you
just
for the clarification. I really appreciate
like
it.
to make sure that, it only goes to
I
the fact.
respectfully, we have given you your time. I just asked for clarification, so I did not misquote you. I would like to hear what Darius has to say.
Yeah, based on John's comment that he's been appointed as interim building inspector, that carries the water and the weight until the exam's over and test results are in and formal appointment is made. So
Okay.
it's a non-issue.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for your patience. Our first applicant, Sophia Delanor at 66 Summit Road. I believe Sophia is with us on Zoom. Sean, if you could.
Good evening.
Oh, wherever you'd like. Yes, if you'd like to sit, pull up a chair, make yourself comfortable.
Good evening,
Evening.
Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Sheridan, attorney with Snyder and Snyder, the attorneys for Ms. Delaner. Here tonight in connection with an application for a fence. There was a lot of information that was just given to the board that really has nothing to do with the application before this board. This board, as the chairman has said, is in charge of reviewing the aesthetics of applications before this. The current code allows for this type of fence on the property. It allowed, Ms. Delaner is proposing a fence that meets all the criteria of that code, so there's no variances required. This board is charged with reviewing the aesthetics of that fence. This board does not need to deal with the issues of where the front yard is. The building inspector, it was not Ms. Delaner, it was the building inspector in his denial letter that indicated where the front yard was. This board does not have to deal with the easements that may or may not impact this property. As we stated with the BZA, that's something that even the BZA did not need to refer to. There is case law about that was submitted to the BZA, and in their determination, they did not refer to any of the easements that are brought up by the opposition that is here today, who also brought up in front of the BZA. That is not something for this board to consider. That's two property owners that have a dispute that should be settled outside of this board. This board can, and I believe should, approve the fence as it's proposed because it does meet all the criteria of the code. And there are so many things, I don't want to miss one, but pretty much everything that was mentioned previously does not need to be considered by this board. Whether the village board is considering some different code provision on Wednesday night, again, they haven't done it yet. They may not approve it. They may consider it. There may be a rainstorm that prevents the meeting. There's a lot that could happen on Wednesday night where whatever is being proposed does not happen. We're here tonight. The code is clear. BZA made it clear. BZA attorney made it clear. This fence is allowed where it is to be located. The only thing the BZA was decided was that it could not be higher than what is allowed in the code. That's all they were allowed to decide. That's all they decided. Anything else was not in their purview. The fence is allowed. It's allowed at this height. It's allowed in this location. This board can approve it. This board should approve it. This board has approved fences called deer fences all over. There's one on April 15th that this board approved, 2021. There's one in October 2021, deer fences along the border of properties, along side yards, along properties. There was one just in June, you may recall, 2023. Deer fence runs along the side of the property, fend off deer. BAR voted unanimously in favor of the application. This is something that you are very familiar with. This is something you have reviewed and approved in the past. We show a picture of what the fence is going to look like. As you can see, it complies with the code, open air, light, open space. Ms. Delaner needs this fence to protect their property from deer. And if we're bringing in things this board doesn't need to consider, from her neighbor who is also trying to take a piece of her property away with a lawsuit that was recently filed. Many reasons why Ms. Delaner needs this fence. We ask that you approve it tonight.
Okay, thank you. John, do you have the photos and material applications? Okay. Darius, could you advise us on one thing before we move forward?
Sure.
So, if the bar were to vote on this, this evening, in light of the Board of Trustees agenda, that later decision would not have an influence. My understanding currently is that we'd be voting based on the laws presently and at the time of the application written for it to be code compliant.
Yeah, ultimately they'll have to issue a building permit for the fence, but that's correct. So if anything happens at the Board of Trustees level afterward, that may impact the building permit, but it won't, your approval is your approval.
Okay.
If it's an approval.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, and on the aesthetic issue, I think last time that we left this, the idea was to remove, there was a tarp material that you had intended to install that was very unsightly.
Correct. I believe that was the main issue that this board had last time. Ms. Eleanor has agreed not to use the tarp material. It's just strictly going to be the fence. The idea is that in the future, there will be plantings, which will also help keep out deer and other animals and create a safe space for Ms. Eleanor. But yes, the tarp is not going to be included.
And Ms. Eleanor, would you like me to address you or your attorney? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I could answer as well. Because I already at that time, at the first meeting, I didn't have a firm decision about what plantings and where would go. So I had enough time to research the plantings. And now I'm basically dealing with nurseries who could deliver and what they can deliver on time. So there will be no tarps. There was no need for it. There will be a lot of plantings.
Okay. So the idea is to get plantings that are larger in scale to hide the fence.
Yeah, to hide the fence and also sort of like prevent deer from seeing what's on the other side, because it's only 6 and 4, which is a little bit too low for the deer fence. But that's it. They would be a little bit taller. I'm not talking tall, I'm talking taller, and would prevent deer from getting idea of jumping.
Do you have a rough idea of the height, just so we know where we're starting from, whether it's like a foot planting or a 3 to 5?
No, you know what? It also depends very much on the nurseries. I'm trying to get as mature plants as possible to get everything already more or less ready.
Okay.
Sorry, could I ask something? Thank you. So are the plantings going to be on the inside only of the perimeter fence, or are they going to be on the outside? Is it right at the edge of the property, or is it?
No, it is going to be 2 feet away and 5 feet away because of the rules. So it's going to be compliant. And in order to make fence, even if I put plantings on the inside the property, fence is not going to be that visible. Vegetation is going to create a background, and fence is going just to melt into it.
But am I wrong in remembering that we had talked about the fence being brought in several feet and even
Yeah,
even further? Because right now what I'm seeing is a lot line, and then it says fence pointed at the lot line as opposed to coming.
No, it is 2 feet everywhere except near the road. It is 5 feet.
And,
I don't see where it comes in.
That's
sorry.
the 5 feet is, the 5 feet comes down here because that's where the road comes in. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
only place. Yeah.
code provision. It's 2 feet around the edge of the property except where it abuts a road, and then it has to be 5 feet off. So that's
So
where
this
the
is
5
2 feet from the property
This
line.
is all of it's 2 feet from the property line, except for this part,
Which is double that.
which is
Five.
5
5.
feet.
And so here, even though we're looking at the lot line, we should
2 feet.
interpret it as 2 feet. in.
Right, if you look in the,
Okay.
it's clear in the table that it
Mhm.
meets the 2 feet setback
Mhm.
on all the
Is that
property.
what you have requested, 2 feet? I mean, you can't really find much on there.
I had remembered it's coming in a little bit farther so that you could have planting on both sides, but
I think that was part of the discussion, and I also think that was part of the discussion in connection with the tarp-ish type material that was going for it to bring it back from the property line. Now that that's not being included, and I think Ms. Delenar has a point that once the, the fence will go up, help the plantings grow, and once the plantings grow, the fence will sort of melt into the plantings, because as you can see, it's a wide, open fencing that with something behind it, it's really gonna be much less visible. It's not gonna be very visible to begin with, but much.
What is
much
the,
less visible.
in the space between the wire, is it about 4 inches by?
Yeah, I think it is about 4 inches. And the fence is not shiny, it's actually black. And it's with a very, very thin wire, strong enough to be a fence, but not very in your face.
I think it would be very important to not have just a verbal description and a small image, but actual, really see the samples like we do with everyone else when we
With the
look at
landscaping.
tiles. And
Sure.
I think we have to have a physical sample. Because I don't even, is that a mesh that goes in between this, or is it, it's
think that's
very
the
difficult
fence
to
from
Metal
see,
behind.
that's
so-
just coated with some kind of a.
Okay, so
preservative.
I think it,
It's just
I
the-
think
it's just the
in
metal
order to
wire
make a
fence.
decision, I would really request to have the physical materials like we do with all, remember the tiles that we requested, and then it was quite a shock when we actually saw, when it was called one thing, and then it's very difficult to see. So I think I would not feel comfortable voting on it without having some physical evidence of what we're dealing with.
I mean, I think it's just metal wire.
As we
It's-
do with every
but,
element.
I can understand that, but just to explain, I think it is just metal wire with that is black, visibly black. So
I mean, one other thing that, coming back to this other question, particularly right on the road, this is a public road, this is West Summit Road.
It's a
it's the
driveway.
common
So that's a driveway, I see. So what road frontage is there? The other,
Down this way.
So there is no.
real road
Right.
frontage as such.
So there's another house right here that it cuts
Right.
between driveway, and then you
Is
have,
there a view line from that house to?
it's positioned like right here.
So how private is this or not, this in terms of their view shed?
This goes into, the house goes this way, so there's.
I guess my point is wherever there is a, public impact, and I think even that could constitute one, I would be inclined to pull it in so you can have plantings on both sides and rely upon what I think is valid that you say of the greenery coming through just from one side, where that is not the case, where it isn't a very public area, for instance, here, but right here, my first reaction is that it should be pulled in an additional 2 feet to provide for some kind of planting to screen it even on that side. Or more, even like another 4 feet.
And I will say that, one, the code allows it to go there, so I understand your consideration. So we're really, at this point, Ms. Dellner wants to get as much of her property in there as possible to utilize that space. And the code does allow for it to be there. And the plantings behind it, I think, will make it blend in and make it go away. Two, I know that just the approvals that I read off that this board has done have been right along the property line. And one, I know it was a unique situation that I even drove by on the way to the meeting here, because the property line drops off from a road. It is right. There's not any space between the road and the property line where there's fencing right along the road. I think it's Tower Hill.
Tower Hill Loop.
Yeah. So the fact this has been done before, this isn't the first time. In fact, what Ms. Dellner is proposing is actually compliant with the code, and the fact that it will be that 2 feet
And I will
back.
say this improves upon the example that you cite because it's a much larger
I'll have to
Right.
decide here.
gap.
Right, and we'll help and there'll
Whereas
be-
the privet doesn't really come through
Right.
on the one you're talking about.
And that's right on the road. This is not on any road. This is not going to be visible that much when it's initially up, because it's going to be far away from everybody, including this house and the road and the other house. And then once the plantings are there, it's really going to, as Ms. Dellner said, it's really just going to sort of disappear into those plantings.
In terms
And
of,
besides, the property is so landlocked that it's so private that it's basically is not seen from any road.
in terms of view line from this house too, once you're about here, you can't see it. I do agree that pushing this back a little might
And they
allow.
have quite a lot of plantings here, I
They
think,
do,
too,
there's a
so-
great deal of privacy.
Right.
I think it'd probably be the least offensive part of it.
Mhm.
And I think 2 feet planting beds should allow enough space to do decent plantings to cover that.
You mean 2 feet on the other
On
side?
the far side,
Hmm.
because there's a 2-foot setback and then 5-foot.
Right.
Wouldn't we require a landscape plan for that? If it's only 2 feet, you have to be incredibly clever in finding plants that can grow there and actually get to that height and disguise a fence.
I mean, I think your other argument is well taken, which is that this material will allow for, I don't think you can fit too much on
Right.
2 feet. That will be appreciable, as Stephanie's saying. I think that this choice, one of the virtues of it is that say arborvitae or whatnot, even leather leaf viburnum, whatever, could go right through. And they can sort of,
As it
And
goes
it's
up, the
complete
fence will
greenery.
melt into the plantings,
right.
either visually or actually as it, not melt, but get this. I think, and one of the things, Ms. Dellner is anxious to get this fence up because she wants to get moving, get into plantings as the spring is coming. So we're really looking to get moving on this as quickly as possible.
I do agree that I think a landscape plan may be helpful, or samples, just to see what the intent is. We have in the past granted conditional approval, but those things would need to be provided for it to be fully approved and be satisfactory.
I think a conditional approval based on a sample and Ms. Dellner, does that work for you?
Yeah.
If they're willing to do that?
I think what we're really missing is material sample and landscaping plan.
I wouldn't
so-
like to approve anything until we have it. I think
Right.
we shouldn't give anything provisional. I think
And
as you
your,
already
and
said,
specifics
yeah,
of the
yeah,
plantings
yeah,
in
no.
question.
Actually, you know what, with the specifics, I could give you information on the hedges, but the property is still developing. So this year I will be, because the property was very, very much neglected and there is a lot of weeds and everything else that have to be eliminated. So I will be planting sort of like a bones of the future garden and then fill them in depending on the availability, on the terms and everything else. I cannot provide a full landscape plan at the moment. The garden actually is being developed through many, many, many years. It's not a flower bed where you would know, okay, here you put pansies, here you put daisies, here you put something else. The whole garden is a bit more complicated.
Yes, but in terms of, for screening purposes, it would be
Oh,
good.
for screening purposes, I actually have a lot of forsythia, which I'm going just to replant because it's been planted in the wrong places. Then I have burning bush and I have, oh my God, forgot the word. Barberry, which is already on the property.
It's lucky
All of these are on the property.
every
That-
single
that
one
you
of those
should
is
Take that
invasive,
down immediately.
and
It's a
non-native.
Catastrophe,
but,
highly invasive species.
Yes, okay. So I think to your point on having a plan to look at, that is something that we need. I can appreciate that a garden is developing, and I, like my fair share of neglected properties, it is a struggle. I think what we would need to fully address neighbors' concerns and do our due diligence would be a landscaping plan showing just the initial plantings that you plan to do for coverage for the fence.
Mhm.
It would not need to be a complete garden plan, but at the very least showing that we will have species and where they would be in order to make this disappear. So I think we're moving in the right
Thank you.
direction, making it less offensive.
and if I
Um,
could just interject
oh,
one
sure,
thing,
yes.
the Tuxedo Park Tree Board, I think, does have a list of natives that are preferred for any use at all, including screening, that will not adversely affect the area.
You know what? I am actually very, very conscientious person. So whatever I'm planting is not going to invade neighboring properties. There are ways to plant things that would limit where their root would go and where they would be able to spread.
Well, no, I mean, Euonymus alatus, seeds wildly. The birds eat the berries, it goes everywhere. So
Which tree you said?
burning bush.
Well, you know what? I've been on a property for 5 years, and these are actually plantings that been there. I don't know how long, whoever planted them, and I never had issues with it spreading.
I guess the point is that when an application comes up before us and,
Mhm.
and you're making a deliberate set of choices, to the greatest extent possible, this board has encouraged applicants to look closely at and to the greatest extent possible, abide by the list of preferred native plant material, shrubs and trees that are native to North America, this part of North America, to the greatest extent possible. So maybe, John, would you be willing to?
I think it's
provide
best if she gets the list straight from
Where
the
would
tree
she-
advisory board. There is a link and there are some email addresses on the website.
Okay,
And we can, we'll make those resources available and send you guys a list. It's publicly available information on our website. I don't see an issue there.
it's just one more way of making the application palatable to the greatest number of people affected possible.
And aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
So I think it sounds to me that we'd not be comfortable voting at this time. What I would encourage you to do would be, am I incorrect in that?
Yeah.
I want to speak for everyone, but
You're
Mhm.
correct.
Yes, the only,
Okay.
my only question, Ryan,
Mhm.
was what Darius may have to say. A lot has been put before us
Yes.
by both councils, and I would really love to hear.
agreed? Let me just finish.
Oh,
Then we can, oh, no,
sorry.
it's all good. My thought.
Can I just say one thing? before,
Sure.
Apologies for, so I think at this point, I just want to make sure, is the fence acceptable to this board? I think you're talking maybe about getting a sample, but it's a wire fence, it's the 4-inch holes. That's something that's acceptable to this board?
To make that determination, let me answer that two ways. What's been presented on the plan is code compliant and with the building inspector. We would prefer to see a sample, but this is certainly moving in the correct direction. I think for us to give our stamp of approval on aesthetics only, we would need to see a preliminary landscaping plan just showing where the ones that are going to cover the fence specifically are. I think that addresses the aesthetic issue, it addresses the neighbors' concerns in hiding it. And Darius will chime in here and correct me if I understand correctly, but from my understanding, this would be based on the laws at the date of your application. Is that correct, Darius? I do have a dramatic pause, but
He may be muted still.
Sorry, it's the mute button. It always, you can't find it,
Right.
Yeah, that's right. All right, yeah.
Okay, so in that event, then, yeah, I would encourage you to get those into John as soon as possible, and we can add it as an agenda item for next bar meeting.
Okay, Sophia, did you want to say anything? And then I'll just sum up.
Not really.
Okay. So at this point, I just want to make sure, so this board is fine with the application as it is because the fence is located where the code has it compliant. All you're looking for now is just a landscape plan and maybe a sample of the wire, which is, since it's a wire fence. I think, at this point to move this along, we'll get what's needed, but we just want to make sure that this board understands that this is something that needs to be done expeditiously for many reasons. One is the plantings need to get in because of the time of year moving forward to get these done. And two, again, as you can see, there's much opposition to this, which is throwing the kitchen sink at the wall, so to speak, and is also suing to take this piece of the property from Ms. Delliner, which we want to make sure that she puts everyone on notice that this is her property because it is her property and that this fencing there would go a long way to do that. And that's why we were coming to this board, part of the reason is coming to this board to get that done and doing it with the code compliance. So that's why we were hoping to get at least the sort of conditional approval with the understanding that we'd come back with those items that this board needs to make sure that they're satisfactory to you. That would be the landscaping plan and the metal wire fencing. And we'd like to get that, you know, that's why we're hoping to get that at least conditional approval this evening because of all the machinations and things that are happening with the opposition pushing to not only sue my client, but get the village board to do their bidding and change the code to try and prevent us from coming back here. So that's why we're really pushing this board tonight and why I'm making this ending speech, really pushing this board tonight to get at least that conditional approval.
I understand your concerns. Typically, we do require material samples, and we have brought it up over the past few meetings. It would be something to help us move it along. We have in the past allowed people to bring in materials after the meeting for conditional approval. The landscaping plan is more the issue for coverage.
Ryan, may I say something? Am I
Yes.
muted? No, may I say? Okay, so let me actually clarify a little bit. My daughter and I are being sued by Guazzoni and God knows who else because he claims that we are trespassing on our own property, and he demands that we will be banned from doing that, and that we are also trespassing on a common driveway. And he threatened to barricade the driveway. So you could see what we have to deal with.
See, but that's not anything to do with us, you know,
It's not.
nothing whatsoever. So
Right, but that's why we have a very strong opposition.
I understand the urgency. It is code compliant. We have in the past allowed people to bring in material samples after. I would on the location of the fence we could do, and they do need to bring us a landscaping plan separately. Can we do conditional on location to help them with building and have them come in with a landscaping plan? Something we're comfortable with?
So it's just,
Yeah.
just addressing the question of comfort,
Mhm.
I was hoping to hear from Darius, just
Yeah.
his informed opinion as counsel to this board, what he makes of the very divergent positions being taken by, you know, applicants counsel and neighbors counsel.
Agreed. I'd like to hear that too.
Yeah, well, I did get that letter today at about, I don't know, 4:30, 4:45. Didn't have a chance to digest it. It was about 8 pages long, I think. You know, my thought is we need time to look at this a little closer. I know there's a pending lawsuit, which I know we looked at the deeds already and some of the, you know, some of the historical facts. I want to look at the lawsuit. I want to look at a bunch of things. I want to, you know, let's see. I don't think we rush this, is my point. I know they want to move fast and get a conditional approval. All that's going to do, even if it's something we could do, is going to create another cause of action in a lawsuit. So if ultimately the Board of Trustees, from a policy perspective, wants to move in some direction to change some law, they can do that. If ultimately that law doesn't allow something, sometimes there's a provision that pending applications can move forward. Sometimes there's not. So I think we wait and see. I think let's look at the sample. Let's look at the landscape plan, what I would recommend. Let me look at the lawsuit. Let me look at the deeds closely. Let me read Mr. Sarcone's letter, and we'll have to report back to you. I think rushing it tonight is probably not the best plan. But I now understand council's position. It wants to move this forward, but
I would respectfully disagree with that because I think even a cursory listening to what the opposition brought tonight has nothing to do with this board's review and approval of this application. It is items that would not be the purview of this board, and this board should not be considering that. Those are items that are either should be done under a separate lawsuit outside of this board's application process or with the village board. And to the extent that you're saying the village board might allow this application to be grandfathered in because under the code, I think you're misreading the room, that the only reason why the village board is taking this action under consideration at this Wednesday's meeting is because of this application and because of the opposition and because they've reached out to the village board and had them reconsider a provision of the code that has sunset. So I think that's incorrect in the assumption that this board should be.
I didn't assume that. I didn't say that. I don't know what they're doing with the
Right, well,
code. They can do whatever they want with the code. That's what their purview is. The
I
issue on
understand.
the law, let me just, Ryan, if I can just make a comment. If it's illegal, if it's not a legal fence that's going to be proposed, I don't want to get the village of Tuxedo Park in the middle of a fight between two neighbors. If the building inspector with our discussion with them determines that this is illegal, this fence, for whatever reason, it would never get to you in the first place on aesthetics. So taking the aesthetics, I know the aesthetics are fine, and then turning around and going to John and they ask for a building permit, and we say, no, John, you can't give them a building permit. It's not on their property. And these are all examples. I'm not making a statement one way or the other. I think it's premature. I think you should wait. Let's make sure this is a legal plan. Let's make sure there's no legal impediment to the village approving this and your bar board approving this, and then if there's no legal impediment, then you can consider it. And there's still outstanding items, the landscape plan, the samples. So I think you're in every right to ask for more information. And I think from a legal side, I would wait. I get the applicant wants to move this forward, but that's my thought.
I apologize, but I think you answered your own question there. The building inspector wouldn't allow it if it were illegal and not allowed. If we got to that point and he couldn't allow it, these are things that are not under the purview of this board. This board is merely to consider the aesthetics, which we've discussed tonight, and which we are pushing the urgency of this, pushing to get a conditioned approval. But that's not for this board. If this board approves it based on aesthetics and somebody else comes along and says it can't be built because of some other reason, that doesn't reflect poorly on this board at all. This board's job is to deal with the aesthetics of the application and not whether it's something that is legal for other documents or ideas that aren't consistent with this. The building inspector has reviewed this application, has seen that it's code compliant, has given it to this board to review for aesthetic purposes, and my understanding is aesthetic purposes only. And anything else, if this board says it's great, excuse me, it looks good, please move forward, something else comes along and derails this project later on, that does not reflect poorly on this board because this board did its job.
Look, I have one question though, because what does seem to be in question, and I'm not getting a clear sense, maybe Darius, you're not, able to give us that at this point, not having yet digested the full 8-page letter from the neighbors, but it is in dispute whether perimeter fences are prohibited in the village, and
It's not in dispute right now. That is what the village board meeting is Wednesday night. They're trying to bring back a provision of the code, which is sunset. That provision of the code, that sunset, which means it's no longer applicable, says that perimeter fences are not allowed.
question of whether it's
based on the application date,
Right.
not on the subsequent change.
right. It seems to be in dispute by the neighbor.
It is in dispute by the neighbor, but that's not for this board to consider. That's not this board's concern. It is not before this
Well,
board. This board is,
I think that issue,
it was clear under.
not just adjacent to aesthetics, but actually inextricably linked to aesthetics.
That is not for this, but the board, the code, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the code right now says this fence is allowed. That's it. The code says it's allowed. They're going on Wednesday night to try and get the village board to say that this code is not allowed.
It's greater clarity to the extent that anyone in this community feels that it is in dispute. I would just as soon take our council's advice, slow this down, wait. There are materials that you and your client are bringing to us, which we look forward to reviewing. And
But I think my concern is this board is not deciding whether the fence is allowed or not. That's not what this board is for. You're not saying, sure, go ahead and put this fence, or this fence is not allowed, you can't put this fence up. This board is only here to say, to review the aesthetics of it, to say, this fence is fine, it is better, like you said, it's better than some fences that already exist in the village. It's, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. So I think to that extent, that's what this board's deciding. It's not going to reflect poorly on this board because it can't, because that's not under this board's purview, whether this fence is allowed in the location it is, because it is allowed in the location it is, according to the code right now. The reason why the opposition went to the village board, I assume, I don't have that, to have the village board take up this issue again on Wednesday is because it is allowed. That's why the village board is taking up on Wednesday, because it is allowed currently. The opposition has, my assumption is, I can't say this for a fact, the assumption is the opposition went to the village board to take this up because we had this argument with the BZA when we were trying to get the fence variance height, which the BZA decided they did not want to give the fence variance, the height to the fence variance for the fence height. So now we're back before this board, code compliant. The BZA attorney was very clear, and made it clear to everybody in the room that the provision of the code that the opposition was trying to rely upon, which is chapter 49 of the code that says perimeter fences are not allowed, had sunset. There's a clear provision in it, says it's no longer
Can
applicable.
I ask a question? Is that reflected in the BZA's determination, what you just said, that that not only was it not in dispute, but that they lent their board's authority in the affirmative to that question, that you could have a perimeter fence? Is that clearly stated in their determination?
But I forget if it is,
Because that would be helpful. That's the kind of thing that would give me, that would take away whatever element of pause that I'm feeling right now.
I don't believe it's in their decision, because
Yeah, I
that's
don't
not
think
the reason why they were looking at the fence.
exactly.
But you did mention that they fine with it earlier. in
The,
your
I'm saying the board attorney made it clear to the BZA.
But previously in your remarks, you had mentioned that they were, that they had approved the placement, just not the height.
No. I said the only thing the BZA was tasked with reviewing was the height of the fence. That's the only thing that was
Right.
before them. That's the only thing they could determine and make a determination on. The
Your
only
earlier
thing.
remarks sort of went beyond that boundary, but let's set it aside. Darius, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, not particularly, but I get council's position and he wants to move this forward. Because if they change the law on Wednesday night, he may not be able to. There are also issues related to the, you can't consider an application that may not be legal. That's within the purview of the building inspector to even put it on your agenda. We got something that came in at 4:30 that said it's illegal, in their opinion. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think with due diligence, we need to look at it. We can't start approving projects on someone else's property. And I'm not saying it is. I don't know what the answer is, because I have to look at it closely. And the deed restrictions. But I think allowing something to be built that is deed restricted, it's just going to get us involved in something we don't need to get involved in potentially.
The case law is clear on that. I'm sorry.
I don't want to argue the law. I don't want to argue the law. That's not my point. My point is I haven't looked at it. I get an 8-page letter from John Sarcone at 4:30. I got to read it. And I'd rather the board not approve something without digesting it and talking about it with you on whether we think you can look at the aesthetics even at all. That's just the long and short.
But the case law is clear. It doesn't matter what the letter says. It doesn't matter. The building inspector has provided this board with the application. The building inspector has confirmed that it is code compliant. It doesn't matter if the neighbor says there's a deed restriction. That doesn't matter to this board. I mean,
You have your record. You have your record. It's up to the board to make their decision.
But the law is clear on that it doesn't matter. The Shawguns case is clear that it doesn't, as long as, if there's a deed restriction or anything, it's not for this board to make that determination. If the
No one is making that determination. That's the whole point.
No,
It's
but
going to
it
be the
doesn't
building
matter.
inspector's
It doesn't
determination to determine
matter.
whether this project can even move forward to this board. This
No,
board
but it
does not make that determination.
No, but this board can only look at what's in front of them based on the code. It doesn't matter if there's a deed restriction, whether it's against it or not. This board should not
Okay,
consider
fine.
that in their determination. And it's only that's for the courts to decide. That's not for this board to decide. The building inspectors review the application. The application shows that it's code compliant. It's on the property. Nobody is disagreeing with that. The only disagreement is that there's some easement. That's not for this board to determine. The board should be reviewing this application based on what's in front of them and the code. That's what we're asking this board to do, not based on a letter given at the 11th hour by opposition. Do they just wait till 10 minutes before the next meeting to give another letter, bringing something else up that you don't have time to review before the meeting and we have to wait another meeting? When does it end? It should end now. It should end now with a conditional approval, because the applicant is allowed to put this fence where she is locating on this property. The code provides that she can do it.
And they've been doing it every meeting.
What is the time frame on delivering the fence materials and the posts and whatever it is that we need to see to look at the aesthetics?
When would you be able to get a sample?
Well, the poles are actually on the property
They are. And
because
also-
we,
And the
Yeah.
mesh.
no, not the mesh. I will reach out, well, I probably could still reach out tonight to the contractor and ask him to deliver as soon as possible. I have a feeling it's going to be a very short time. Maybe like only a couple of days.
Okay. And the turnaround on time for the landscaping plan?
That's a little bit harder.
Mhm.
Because I have to look, basically, right now, I have to look at the list that you are going to provide, do research on all these things. Do they actually, they may be corresponding to the village aesthetics, maybe they're not my aesthetics.
Well, I think there's a wide range to that question, Mrs. Delaner, of.
Right. But you know what? It's sort of like what I was looking for. I was thinking about planting, let's say, Japanese maples, and they're more or less native to this area, to the northeast, or pine trees, which are more or less.
Well, there are red cedars, there are white pines, there are plenty.
Yeah,
for
Yeah,
sure.
that's what I'm looking for the nurseries to hear when can they basically deliver.
So.
But those are going to be not the borders, those are going to be inside the property. And that's, again, I cannot provide you with a plan, a planting plan for that, landscaping plan for that, because this is still in developing stages, depending very much on availability from the nurseries, depending very much on what sizes I would be able to get, because I don't want to get a tree that is only 4 feet tall. I don't have that many years to wait for it to grow till, I don't know, 10, 12, which it's supposed to be fully grown. But I will look through the list that you will provide, and I will see which plans will work for me.
And just to be clear, I think the building inspector has suggested it's not appropriate for us to provide it to you, but you can find it on the Tuxedo Park Tree Advisory Board.
Well, I could, yeah, I could do that.
Completely
Oh,
appropriate
it's
for
in
us
the,
to
it's in the
recommend that.
design guidelines.
Yes.
So you can find that on the,
On
village
the
website.
village website, it should be readily available. If you have any questions, please, we're happy.
Yes.
to provide that for natives.
Yes.
Okay, so we have two options. Of course, the applicant can request that we take a vote this evening. What we're missing is the material samples and the landscaping plan. I do agree, and I do wish that we had feedback, not at the last hour, and I think that is a clear tactic to delay. We can go one of two ways. You can ask us to take a vote. It doesn't sound like the board is fully comfortable not having those samples and the design. If we choose not to vote, I would recommend that you get those samples to us as soon as possible. And at the next bar meeting, which is, do we have a date for that, John? 2 weeks? 3, I think?
The first Monday in May. Oh, sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
That's okay. So first Monday in
Approximately
May
2
would
weeks.
be the next date that we would be able to take a vote on that. So if you and your board decide if you'd like us to force a vote this evening or not.
I'll provide the samples.
Wonderful.
I mean, I guess, Mike, the last consider is the conditional approval based on that. Is that something that's?
That would be what, if we were taking a vote, it would be conditional getting these items. As I've said, members have shared their discomfort with that, given the tenor of, well.
May 6th is the next bar meeting.
May 6th would be the next bar meeting. And as Darius has advised, this application would be subject to the laws on the date in which it was submitted. I have that correct, Darius?
Well, it could be. It depends what the law says. And maybe I jumped too quickly at that last answer. It depends on what the law says. They may, I don't know what the draft law says now, or if there is either one they're doing, but
This action on Wednesday is an attempt at just to prevent this specific.
yeah, they could. So I can't commit one way or the other, depending on what the law says. They may grandfather in existing applications, they may not. So if the law today says perimeter fencing is available, and there'd have to be a little research to see is this application allowed. I don't know. It may not. It may not. I don't want to waffle, but I'm going to waffle.
I mean, I can answer that question.
You can answer it, but I don't. You don't really need to advise my client what the answer is. I think you should let the process play itself out. We'll look at what the law says. If it's passed, there may not be a law that's passed. We don't have to worry about it.
That is true. That's why it shouldn't be considered at this meeting, because it may not be passed. So, but with that in mind, it is being considered on Wednesday, and that's why we're looking to get this moving as quickly as possible.
And they obviously want a conditional approval done because they think it's going to apply. I don't know that it is or not. I don't know if it's going to be passed. I don't know what it's going to say specifically about existing applications.
That is true. So, I mean, I think
We've advised our concerns. The decision is up to you if you'd like us to take a vote on it.
Ms. Dellner, I think,
Yeah.
Will you be able to provide that information by the next meeting?
I am actually writing email right now to the contractor to speed things up. And again, the posts are already on the property. So if you want to look at the posts, please do.
Stop by.
I think, conditional approval is not something
We can take a vote on it if that's what you'd like, but we have given our concerns.
So Sophia will come back in the next BAR meeting.
In May.
Okay. And thank you for your willingness to work with us to get a more aesthetically pleasing solution. It is appreciated.
The goal is to get this fence up as soon as possible, so we appreciate that.
And again, can I ask, please, the advisory for the plans is in the guidelines? Because I actually read the guidelines from the beginning till end. I actually I haven't seen the advisory for the plans.
If not, is available on the tuxedopark.gov website.
Mhm.
I don't have the link in front of me now, but we can send that to you so you have a list.
Oh, that would be very, very much appreciated.
Certainly, make a note.
Thank you. And regarding the plan, can it be done by hand or does it have to be done by the engineer?
An engineer would be preferable. We have accepted hand ones in the past.
Yeah, because I don't think I could organize engineer as fast again.
Okay. Well,
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next agenda item, and thank everyone for their patience. Edward Hargroves, 44 Clubhouse Road. No one minds. I'm going to open a window. It is literally 77 on the thermostat. John, do we have the applicant's materials?
Well, they have made some minor updates to the aesthetics.
Okay.
You might want to look at those.
Oh, yours are.
I think
Okay.
they're-
These are just the updates, so it's
Yep.
mixable.
Great.
Let's start with the updates.
The only major change between this previously submitted drawings and these going before you now is an additional window.
Okay. Would you mind pointing out where that is to us?
That additional window is here.
Okay, so that's facing the garage on the north elevation?
Yeah, we've debated back and forth with the client about the inclusion of it or not. We decided to include it, it'll bring more light into the living room, and it's located within our, new addition, so it'd be part of the new work.
Okay. Do you have an elevation showing that?
View it. It'll be A202.
Okay, so it's matching the mirroring the window next to it, same style and size?
Shutters, size.
Yeah, I think it's a great addition.
Great.
Into the wall and looking at the empty without it. Mhm.
Window, actually.
Yeah.
Facade.
Agreed. Great addition.
So now we have that out of the way. Let's address some items from the last meeting that are now part of this submission.
Okay.
Patio material and landscaping wall materials. We've decided to keep, and add some new existing brick as the floor surface for the new exterior patio. And then the low landscaping walls will be the same material that we're using for the foundation. And then with the addition of a bluestone cap on top. I think it brings the aesthetic together and it's not so much brick.
Mhm.
I think previously we had
Mhm.
proposed, brick up to 50 long. And using this chunky veneer material for our landscaping wall, tie all of that together, make it look as one.
Yeah, that'll blend much better with the foundation.
Another item that we talked about was the window and door specs, which I provided previously. They're not on the drawings, they were the spec book that I submitted with the application. The windows, we're looking at a wood interior, clad exterior. Both sides would be painted same color, probably from the factory.
I noted in the spec that they were aluminum windows that were wood clad. Was there a reason that wood to match the existing windows was not applicable?
They're wood interior.
Right, so the exterior is a metal and then it said wood clad, so it's wood going over it. Those sometimes can delaminate.
I've not had that experience. We've used the, specifically the Anderson 400s, and then we've also used the Weather Shield Signature Series.
Hmm.
Both are very similar in the way they're constructed. More of a price conscious decision. All the windows obviously a little bit more expensive.
Mhm.
That's the idea behind the decision to do an aluminum clad window.
Okay,
Can I say something?
of course.
Are we allowed to speak about windows? I would definitely propose that it should be an entirely wood window. I know at one point we allowed someone who was in a distressed position in the pandemic to buy a bad window and have it modified. But I think if there is no pandemic and there's plenty of wood windows available, I think the quality improvement on the overall scheme would definitely warrant that. If you would consider it, I think it's just so much more lovely to have. I'm taking all of my vinyl things off that had been put in by another owner, and they don't last, and they just deteriorate horribly.
So definitely no vinyl has been proposed. Would the board be more willing to do a wood window that's clad on the exterior? The idea is a maintenance-free, or nothing's maintenance-free, but a low-maintenance alternative, since we are painting or having, white finish on all of these windows on the outside.
What do you think?
Typically, although with that egregious case, did approve it. We typically do not. We would prefer wood windows if a case can be made that, I mean, that room is completely uninsulated and all 100-year-old glass. If it's something like an R value, or I know they had issues with those ones rotting out for maintenance, an argument could be made for that. But if it is strictly for cost, we tend to frown on mixed use just because they don't stand the test of time. So you'll end up spending even more 10 years from now when it starts to separate, at least in my experience. So we do prefer all wood if that's possible, or a reason to justify the new product. We have also approved fiberglass as an alternative for lowered maintenance, to kind of go up in material as opposed to down. Although aluminum, we have approved, not wood clad, but we have approved aluminum windows in special case.
Mhm.
A sample would be very helpful.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to make it clear, we don't want to do vinyl.
Thank you. It is greatly
Yeah.
appreciated.
The spec that I did submit was aluminum and wood, no plastic vinyl.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll take a closer look at that spec sheet.
Okay.
But
And
as you said, if we could also see a physical sample.
That would be great.
Incredibly helpful.
Okay,
There's so much variation between.
I know.
Okay.
moving on to doors.
Wonderful.
We expect excuse me, I'm having a brain fart. A specific brand that I cannot think of the name of right now. They are fiberglass doors, along the same idea of the lower maintenance option, because they do have some issues with the current not well-maintained version, where the windows rot out, and I believe you have other windows in other parts of the house that haven't stood the test of time.
Yes.
So that's the idea behind. Yes, thank you. So that's the door spec that we did provide for this meeting.
John, do you have that spec sheet by chance?
I didn't.
I did see it.
I did not print them out, but I can print out 2 copies if you give me a moment.
Thank you.
In the meantime, next item, one of the things that we talked about a little bit at the last meeting were these railing details underneath. We've taken inspiration from the windows of the front of the house that have these beautiful crisscross pattern on there. Not sure how old these windows are, but I'm pretty sure they've been there, maybe they're original. So we've taken this design and making it railing compliant, so no openings larger than 4 inches. Use that as inspiration for this custom-made wrought iron detail that would provide detail for the exterior, but also functionality for the roof deck.
And that was to help with the drainage issues we're having from
Yeah,
the rotting.
snow removal.
Gotcha.
And kind of sight lines too.
Yeah, I think it's nice to take inspiration from the house existing versus the previous proposal. Thoughts?
And it seems like an improvement, I think, over what I can't recall what.
It was.
Large.
Yeah.
It was very different.
It is an improvement.
Bold.
Is the intention, because
There's another image on A901, which should be the last page that we have there. More of a perspective. More of a perspective view. You can see them here.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
might not be as easy, but there's also
Oh, down here is easy too.
So the balustrade here
Mhm.
will be white,
yes.
right? And was the intention to have these sort of painted white or black or what?
Mention there wrought iron.
Wrought iron. So they'd be.
In
wrought
other
iron.
words, you'd leave them black or right?
That'd be a nice detail.
I think aesthetically they fit more with the house now than the previous option.
It
And I've
seems
always
an
been in
improvement.
favor of canceling them completely, but
I would be.
maybe too radical, but
I
I
would be in
really don't
agreement,
like them, yeah.
I'd be in agreement with that. The only argument I'd make for keeping them is that this entire porch and even the corner, if you go and
Mhm.
stand here, it moves. They've been getting an incredible amount of rot because the snow, there's not enough pitch.
On
to
a
get it
flat
off.
roof, right?
So they have a functional element to kind of preserve the structure.
Yeah, the idea is you could shovel snow kind of through it instead of having to lift it up over the railing.
I do agree with you that it would be cleaner without them, but they
I
do.
once took out
Yeah.
an elevator,
Mm.
made people walk forevermore. for floors because
Getting those steps
so
in.
I could agree that I'm possibly radical. But I'm as a minimalist, I would just love the cleanness of not having that there and just, I would shovel.
I will say without them, it does give a wide distance, you know, it kind of almost makes, without the wrought iron detail, it
Mhm.
makes this seem almost too much of siding above. Unfortunately, we can't add any transoms because of the interior ceiling height. We did kind of explore that a little bit. So functional, aesthetic, you know, that was kind of the driving factors for this design decision.
Well, I think it's an improvement and, you
Certainly
know, I
It's
think,
better.
you know, the applicant and, you know, the, I think it's what this process is all about, is making refinements that improve.
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's move on to our next item.
Sure.
Sure thing.
The next item is the railing specs. We were taking inspiration from what's existing, specifically on the front porch, which is a newel post with colonial spindles, with some type of square cap on top. We would like to use composite material, specifically up here, weather, you know, lower maintenance, and they will last a lot longer.
Like boral or something,
Mhm.
compressed wood here.
Yeah.
That makes
And
good
painted
sense
to
me.
match the other trim around it. That wouldn't be perceivable.
Oh, I think it would
Yeah.
be a very sound
Yeah.
decision, but.
The same to be said for the handrails and railing for the staircase down below.
It's great to carry from the front. Okay.
Hot tub. So we were at the meeting last time. We've this month, so good month. We did get approved for the location of the hot tub and the lot coverage.
Wonderful.
So that's included.
And that covers your addition as well, the lot coverage. Great.
That being said, on hot tub, is proposed that the steel that's put in it, put under this, neighbors. That's, the materials, will be bluestone as well.
Mhm.
And maybe some stone underneath.
So this would be at patio level?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's bench height from the
Okay, so you can like
exterior.
step over. Got it.
Exactly.
But that's
Yeah.
always been concerning me that they're different height levels.
What would be nice too is this has a privacy fence and it's behind the property, so it's very protected from.
Yeah. But I still think that it would be like this one, this kind of, in any way of possibly cleaning this a little bit and just not having these different walls and fences and
There is some.
different steps up and down.
There is some topography, that we've been working around. Obviously, this big swath of patio will be one level, it will be pitched to drain in the appropriate direction. And the slope actually pitches up towards the road,
Okay.
so we've tried to tuck the hot tub into the slope as much as
Right,
possible.
right.
I think going down any more than we have would make our retaining wall kind of over your head
Right,
as you're sitting
right,
in the hot tub.
Right.
So that was our consideration for that. There's also an exterior.
You see that, that, so these different little steps, more steps down, up and down, another one up, another one down.
I agree, it would be nice if it could be level with this, but I think to the topography issue,
Mhm.
it does slope up. So there'd be considerable, you'd have to remove a considerable amount of land to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe undermine the foundation of the garage. I won't be, sir. Very thorough. All right.
Thank you. What do you say, Rob, about the different levels and all the steps? Do you have an,
Uh,
do you not worried about it? Or?
I think it would be better without. I don't know what to say about the topography challenge.
Right.
And you couldn't, right.
It seems there's another little wall there and, enclosing those two steps in between the building.
That goes to the driveway. That's actually those two steps.
That's,
Mhm.
those are existing, are they?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
And the low walls on either side are really landscaping retaining.
gotcha.
It's even a way of almost cleverly integrating the steps. The thing is, it's very hard to know if you're not right standing and seeing the actual levels of the ground.
One question I have is A901 on the very bottom. As you come up from the front steps, the front of the house, you
Yes.
see the bluestone sort of does this jagging of about 1.5 or 2 inches. And I'm wondering why you don't just make the wall sort of gradually appreciate in height as opposed to that strange, or it's going down, I suppose. What is the thought behind that
It's a
jagged?
natural result from our 3D modeling software. It's easier to draw a flat wall than it is to draw a curved wall.
Oh, so that's not intentional.
No.
I-
This was the intention, but I like your idea
Alright,
better,
yeah.
to have
I
it
haven't-
sloped with the walkway.
Because if you look at where there's a deliberate
Mhm.
jump off, it feels right.
Yeah, it'd be so much cleaner.
If you go to where you come to this curved wall, that feels deliberate. This felt just odd.
Yeah, I think that would look much nicer. Okay, did we want to flip through views while we have them? And just have an idea? What color did you plan on using on here?
Oh,
To
it's-
indicate?
It should be marked. Maybe it's not. I
White, or yours
apologize.
is missing
no,
that page?
this
Lindsay,
one.
or-
You know what? It's a different page.
That's
Oh,
the
that must
grouping
be-
color.
The 19, the second page.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. It was
No
circle.
worries.
Okay. So white trim to match the existing trim that's there. Let's see the spec. So aluminum exterior cladded wood products. I mean, I have concerns for the interior, but theirs are going to be white anyway. You won't see the track. We have approved aluminum windows, I know for a fact. And it is clad in wood to hide the fact that it's aluminum. They have a grievance because this entire side is rotted out.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be matching the existing windows. So aesthetically, it's the same window design. I don't see on this the Muntins.
No, they do provide them. They do provide a simulated divided light or true divided light. I think the idea would be to do a true divided light.
Thank you.
That's great.
And I'm looking, so we do full divided on top and bottom to match existing.
Exactly.
I'm just looking, is the curved detail only on the upstairs? I'm looking just on the upstairs windows.
Yes.
And then the downstairs is just square.
Yes, there's a few exceptions, mainly being this
Oh, the
front
arch
porch
different window
area.
type though.
And then if you look
Okay.
at these windows out on the front as well.
Right. Yeah, I don't see an issue.
No, it's okay.
I mean, if we were doing the entire house and it wasn't rotting out, then I think we would push for wood, but you've had to put drainage in there. I'd feel comfortable. Do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Next item.
Back to the hot tub. Along with the hot tub is the fence that we put in above our retaining wall. The idea would to be privacy fence, it's very short and length, just to cover hot cloud from the front
And this would
side.
shield the generator as well, so
Correct.
that's, okay.
Yes. We were proposing a tongue and groove fence, probably painted white, because that's the theme of this house, everything's green and white.
Mhm.
That's the idea.
Wonderful. And I'm sorry, what was the material?
Tongue and groove fence, maybe a wood composite material.
Okay, so similar to the railings? Okay. Do we need a sample of that?
I'd like a sample just for,
Sorry?
I'd like to see a sample, just for confirmation in the field, nothing else.
Okay, if you could please provide us a sample of that, it'd be greatly appreciated. No. Okay,
Lighting. There's two different lighting options in the spec book. First one, yes. First one is the exterior sconces that would go on either side. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they're supposed to go on either side of the back door. I believe I indicated which one, maybe not.
Mount Vernon LED bulbs.
Yes, there's different
You can see
sizes. Excuse me.
post
The nine
motion,
and
outdoor
a half
pendant.
inch version.
Okay,
And it is a frosted pane, so you're not able to see bulb.
Mm.
Dim the light just slightly enough where it won't hopefully irritate any neighbors. They're more for safety on the staircase than lighting the entire patio.
Can you find a lovely antique? Like a fabulous iron one that from the date of the house?
That would be,
No,
maybe.
they're so fabulous and they cost very little. So adorable.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're open, we recently kind of chose this, but open to looking at other options.
Is it allowed? I'm allowed to say that? Is it allowed?
you're certainly welcome to give feedback.
I'm just so passionate about these beautiful old lamps that you get everywhere.
There's a wonderful resource in Newburgh, Hudson Valley House Parts, that they're very reasonable and do a lot of architectural salvage,
Spend a lot of time.
more than I care to admit. But I mean, if they were unable to find something, the concern also might be the number. So we just have the two here, and then how many others were we?
The other lighting option is a different type.
Oh, okay, great. So yeah, I mean, that might be a good use for
I
those.
I
but
like the model
it's-
very much, I think, but if you had that in the detailing of these old ones is so beautiful. But in principle, I don't have any problem with it.
Very good, agreed.
Next page, lamps plus, these are proposed low wall landscape lighting. They're installed between,
It's like underneath the Bluestone path.
exactly.
Like that.
Yes.
I mean, they're downward gliding. It's going on a walking path too, so it's a safety fund.
So the idea would be to light,
Mhm.
the underside of the landscape,
Mhm.
hardscape.
Okay.
Once every 4 feet or every 3 feet or something.
Yeah, like photos on that.
Less than every 5 feet.
Mhm.
There are certain provisions, right, that are
There
given
are.
by the park. I don't know exactly what the rules are about the light level, but you, John, you know those, right?
It's upward lighting on facades.
Mm,
There's a certain lumen output. This is not. It's a passive
It's
light.
downward
Okay.
facing.
All right.
Last thing on my notes was the additional window.
That's helpful. Okay. Do we have any concerns, questions?
No.
The only thing I had, we spoke at last meeting about a landscaping plan. Was there any progress on that?
No, not yet, and I understand you
Okay.
guys wanna maybe build and then do the landscaping afterwards.
Okay. And yeah, I don't think we require that for what's being proposed.
no,
The hot tub was covered. So, in that case, if we don't have any more feedback,
No.
wonderful. We would require a fence sample and a window. Sample of the window. I'd like to make a motion to, oh yeah,
Partial window sample or full size?
if you can get the full size, wonderful, but, whichever is available for that. Yeah.
It would be full. It would be an option.
And sometimes they do like cuts where it's like a, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great. So I'd like to make a motion to pass for the Hartgrove property. Do I have a second?
Second.
This would include samples of the fence material, the windows proposed. The windows are, their name on here?
Usually the Weather Shield, signature series.
The Weather Shield Signature Series windows, aluminum construction with wood clad for the rotting issue that they're experiencing on that spec sheet. In addition to pages A901, A101, A201, A202. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Unanimous. Thank you very much. We, of course, we really appreciate the clear detail shown in here. And I think those lights would be pretty cool.
But I think these are a great.
They are a great option.
If these are what you choose, I think they're great.
As far as timeline schedule.
As soon as they're available, it is a conditional approval. They don't, as long as it's within what was presented, that's fine. Do you have an idea of how long it would take you?
Maybe before the next BAR meeting.
Okay, certainly. Just as soon as they become available, please meet them. Thank you. And John is usually at the office. You can let us know when it's down here and we'll take a look. Next application, and condo at 17 Weewa. Thank you.
Sure you guys are up for more of this?
Thank you for your patience. Those are fantastic pants.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Warm.
He
I
just
have
wrote-
no
he wrote
idea
me
what
that.
y'all had to do, but this, we've only been here 3.5 months.
Yeah.
That was a sort of medium. There have been worse.
How they have,
This was
yes.
not-
I
this
got
was
a
not
little
as bad as we
anxious
might-
when the-
Tell me about it.
I've been screamed at and called a bigot, but it's been fun. On that note, I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Okay.
You guys
They
should
are
have some
you.
hazard pay
It
or
is
something.
usually a very positive experience. There are one or two outliers. but, moving on.
Yes.
Do we have the applicant's materials, John? Thank you. All right,
There are two or not one?
Uh,
But you,
oh,
here.
Okay. Thank you. Building application. Yes, okay, so this is for the fence around the Weewa. Have you guys had a chance to review?
I have, I felt
Wonderful.
terrible. Wait, this is regarding the dog? attack?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I felt so,
Achilles lives outside of the park across the street and apparently has terrorized a number of Tuxedo Park residents for a very long time, and John's aware of that as well. We kind of moved here in part because our dog, a rescue dog, we rescued a 9-year-old dog in the middle of the pandemic, and he was attacked twice in our old neighborhood,
Poor little
Greenwood
guy.
Lake. So we thought we
Big
came to
sign on
Tuxedo
him.
Park for safety. We chose a property without any neighbors.
and so Achilles has attacked you or your child?
He's chased
No,
us.
no, no,
He's
he's chased
particularly
us.
chased you. Back, he showed up on right in front of our front door.
And he comes right onto your property.
all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and I have,
That's horrible.
when we first, moved in, you got all that snow in January, which was magical and beautiful, and I was just, walking along, cause also I didn't know the area yet, so just kind of walking along there, taking my dog out, and I saw some very large prints, and I was like, it's not Scooter's prints,
Right.
and I was like, huh, and then I look up, and
Oh,
there's
no.
Achilles using
What
our
is it?
yard for his,
is that?
he's a German Shepherd,
Oh,
large
no.
Okay.
using a, defecating.
Yeah.
And I was like, I actually took a video because I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And then we ran back,
Oh,
but,
So we
Yeah.
would have created just because Scooter is not trained to be off leash, he's a part beagle, so he'll sniff it and just go who knows where. So we
Right.
wanted to just get an enclosure,
Right.
which is the back part facing the lake.
Yeah.
But then because of the problem with Achilles, we said, you know what? That adjacent property, that wonderful wooded space that the two previous owners created is incredible.
Mhm.
So to appreciate that safely with regards to Achilles, but also with regards to access, there's a stone path that goes through the woods there, and the stone path has got moss on it, a little bit slippery. I have elderly parents, we have young nieces, so we're my thought was to put up essentially a fence / handrail that goes along that. So we wouldn't be enclosing off or blocking off this wonderful property, all with aesthetically pleasing fence, but just enough to create a little bit of security and safe for accessing that part of our property. So that part was, we did not expect to do that. We didn't want to incur the expense of doing that, but I do think it will be of benefit beyond just Achilles.
But how high is that?
4 feet.
4 feet.
On the next page, it's a little more clear.
Yeah, and also I got another document from our
Updated
fence
picture
guy.
of the next page.
Unfortunately, I printed out one
Okay.
copy. My apologies.
That's
I didn't
we
get
can
it till
share.
Friday, but it's just notating its distance from the road and property lines and
So
stuff.
fence to be minimum 2 feet of property line, fence to be great paper.
Thank you.
Fence to be minimum 5 feet off the roadway. Okay, so just,
Yeah.
it's an annotation that it's code compliant.
I just have one question. There's a faint red line, that between your property and the lake. That's just your boundary. line.
That's just, yeah, I actually, yeah, that's just the boundary of the
We
property
lifted
line.
that picture from the listing.
Yeah.
That's where that picture.
So the fence is the green line,
Yeah.
This-
Yeah,
but it does, so the pieces of fence don't connect.
correct.
So just terminate at the lake to keep the dog out and not be a true perimeter fence.
So does the lake come in here, or I'm trying to figure out, because it seems to peter out right there.
That's right. So if you've ever taken the walk around, there's a bridge right there that
Right.
covers the stream that loads into the lake. So that we intended to stop it at the
Mhm.
bridge. There are, you see where the gaps are in the fence?
Mhm.
There are boxwoods and low stone walls there already. So they provide an effective barrier, but
Oh,
there's
wonderful.
significant gaps between them, which we wanted to close off
Right.
with just that setback 4-foot aluminum fence. Just to kind of, we didn't want to ugly it up, but we need.
And is your sense that, sorry, that Achilles won't be able to sort of come right around?
He'll be able to access a good chunk of our property, so.
Sure, here,
Yeah,
right.
everything here. He'll
But
be,
what about, he can't just come around?
he'd have to come through the stream to do that. So it's not, it wouldn't stop him if he were determined, but.
But the stream
the
is a
time.
natural deterrent.
That's what we're hoping, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can incorporate the natural landscape into it.
I have, I don't know if this is helpful. I also have the brochure from the, it's the more, the style event that we were planning on hoping to do, that contemporary.
So it was like the kind of handrail option.
Yeah.
flat on top.
Is that part of the rationale of having an additional one here, is that he could come around, but now you're sort of doubly protected, or?
Yeah, so the part that borders on the house and that terminates at the lake, that's the only place we'll let Scooter be by himself.
Okay.
So he's
So
fully fenced.
the
And is
idea-
that a little bit
Yeah.
taller, or is that still?
We would like to do 6 feet
Yeah,
there. if it's
okay.
amenable. Just
So,
to
so 6 feet would begin right here, or where would that begin?
6 feet, only the portions that go
So
to the
like
water.
Right at this sort of elbow. it would go-
But yeah, this piece that kind of jogs through the woods is all 4 feet.
So the curvature, that's 4 feet, but then the minute you come here, that would be 6 feet, and this would be 6 feet.
That's correct.
It'll strictly be side and rear will be 6 feet.
Right.
Front will be 4.
Right, and that's something only you see. I feel your pain.
Yeah,
I feel
I-
Scooter's
You know.
pain.
It's,
An elderly rescue violence, a special.
Was he just frightened, or was he actually bleeding?
not from Achilles, to
Oh,
be clear. He
oh,
didn't get.
Not yet.
Uh,
Okay.
Well,
No.
This
he
is-
has been attacked, yeah, exactly, twice in the past.
this is
One time where I had to take him to an emergency room, bled both times, but the second time, like my dog, he's a kick me sign. I don't know why, but,
You're
he,
good to adopt him and give him a beautiful.
you
He's
can get
aging in
him.
reverse. He's 13 now, but he loves to walk that loop and he keeps asking for the bigger loop. He's in better shape than I am.
That's not like.
Way older
Yeah,
dog.
no, he's a good boy.
Hey Darius.
You're on mute, Darius.
He can hear you
Oh,
if he's listening.
Darius, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay,
No,
well,
he's right what he says. It's last year's budget, but it says 2024.
You need me?
Darius, I can't, sorry, there's some background noise.
Sorry, I'll step out of a room. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can now.
Sorry.
So looking at an application in front of us, I just want your opinion to make sure that we're not looking at a perimeter fence here. The other boundary is the lake, so it would not encompass, it goes to the house. It doesn't look like a perimeter fence to me, but with the upcoming BOT agenda and a 90-day moratorium potentially on them, I don't want to give approval to something that is immediately going to be shot down. So
Right.
would this have any inkling of being a perimeter fence?
So it's along a lake. Who owns that lake?
The WeWa, so I guess.
Village.
It's not along the lake.
Not along the lake,
It's not,
actually.
Darius, it's not along the lake, it's only the green
Oh,
line.
sorry if
Yeah.
that was unclear. What I said
It's
was
okay.
the other side of the property is on the lake, and then this closes in the road side.
But even where it's along
Yeah.
the road, correct me if I'm wrong, the way it's drawn, it looks like it has 8 to 10 feet in.
Oh, here we go.
Is that
It's,
accurate?
So 5
Oh.
5 feet,
Oh,
and then
Minimum.
from
Most of
roadway
them are more
minimum,
than
and
5.
2
That makes it not a perimeter fence,
by
as far
definition.
as I
Right.
understand.
No, that
right?
has no.
John, what do you think?
Okay.
I wouldn't have sent it here if it didn't comply with zoning.
okay. And it's not the entirety of the property, it's just certain.
Well, that's the distinct difference between this application and the Delaware
That
application.
was then closed.
This fence does not go around the entire property,
Right, so.
where the Delaware property fence does enclose the whole property with a gate here and there, but there's also, I think, some gates
There are
proposed
gonna
here.
be gates.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't considering it this, so it didn't
Yeah.
cause
Mhm.
problems for you
Of
guys.
course.
Yeah. So all setbacks are done. Do we have any thoughts on Matt? On the selection and fence of the contemporary one? Do you put something a little more traditional, do better?
I feel good about,
Yeah, I like this personally, but it's for an
well,
aesthetic
also
issue,
as
this being
a,
more fitting, but-
as a handrail, given that that's part of the
Right.
point, I think that,
This would be flat too.
right.
Just food
The
for
one,
thought.
the ones that are appealing to me are A, B, C.
Right, and then that kind of brings in the element of that one. Is,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing this where you have 6 feet and this where you are using it as a handrail.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. that would-
Because 6 feet,
a good
this,
idea,
this might actually read as kind of
Yeah.
relentless, and this might break it up. a
And like
bit.
having that high up might be too much of a modern
Mhm.
element. That's a good idea.
Maybe
So, I mean, maybe
That's
consider.
fine.
Oh, of course, no, that
Yeah,
sounds great.
that's
In
fine.
fact, the 6-foot piece was kind of, for us, it's almost kind of future-proofing the fence. Scooter's very athletic, but he's only 30 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So 6
Some
feet is-
spikes.
Yeah,
for-
but not, but spikes.
Oh, no.
He's seen enough,
It's
he's seen enough
for the-
violence.
it's for the incoming, I guess.
But I do
Well,
think there's something
defense.
about the open-endedness of the top that kind of feels
That's
less,
very-
That's a great idea.
Agreed.
So you're saying that at the that were the for the 4 and that for the 6? Or I'm
Oh,
sorry, the
So
reverse.
the
That for the
reverse.
6,
So
that for the 4.
taller
This
having
one-
the pickets, and then
yeah.
the shorter one
where you
allowing
can
the
run your
handrail.
hand.
Got you.
And I mean, they still read the same. I think
Yeah.
that would delineate them well.
That's fine.
It's nice material, though. I didn't know this company.
No, I haven't heard them, but it looks lovely.
I think what I tend to shy away from is when you're doing something and you have some folderol and some attempt at details. If you can't really do them, it's better
Yeah.
not to.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that would be something I would have.
So, okay, well, in that case, I would like to make a motion to pass the application for 17 WeWa, given the materials provided for avant fences, the traditional straight picket A1 for the 6-foot areas, and the contemporary E2 for the 4-foot areas. And for the
Just wait 1 second though, are they abutting each other? The
Uh,
6 and the 4?
I think
so in
right
this
here.
If
area,
there's a gap in between, I'm just worrying what happens if you have these two next to each other.
I
don't
think it might.
be able to see them, they're in the side yard that faces.
It'll be in the
woods.
woods where
It
they.
will not be,
Yeah.
oh,
See
I
it at
see.
all.
Side yard, I think it might read better as a like a handrail next to the
Yeah, I
fence,
agree with that.
coming
yeah,
off of that.
yeah.
And
I
it would
think
be
so,
enough of
yeah.
a distinction that, that you would, I think it would feel deliberate. It would be right here, would it
Right.
not, this kind of
No.
This kind of elbow right there, or?
Well, actually, the 6 feet will probably terminate on the corner of the house, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
hard to
Oh, even
see in
better.
this diagram. You're gonna see there, we're gonna cut off at
Even
the
better.
house for,
Okay.
for machinery access back
No,
there.
you can see it better on here. That's the corner of the
Oh,
house
okay.
and then there's a
Yeah,
gate
that's-
there.
that's
That's
my only
So
And
it
you
would
can
terminate
always-
at the house.
And you can always soften it with planting if it
Mm.
does look awkward, and that's
Yeah.
something that will affect only you, and
You don't see the transition, it's almost behind the house,
Mhm.
almost.
Wonderful. Okay. So per the plans provided by Ramondi and Associates, is there a date? Can't read that.
That's an older survey.
It's from,
This is, I think this is the most clear one, just.
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
found. If, is there one you prefer? that
No,
was-
no, that's the one
That's
that's
fine.
Mosaic.
Yeah. So prefer the. It's been a long day. Per the Ramondi and Associates LLC, one given today, there's not a date on here, indicating the aluminum where the gates are and the section of wire fencing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
and Swift.
And
Yes,
thank you
that-
for all the work that you do.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is
Fun.
intense. And it's so beautiful. We gotta kind of pinch ourselves every time we drive in.
Right?
It's beautiful.
Likewise.
We do, we do.
It's so,
Is it worth it?
is this the new one? This is the new one.
New one is the
No.
New adoption?
Okay. So on that note, a review of the minutes. Do I have that's right?
I hope it
That's
solves
right,
the
it's on the
problem
screen.
too.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So for this March 4th were the last minutes that need to be approved.
I have not had a chance to review them. I've been traveling. Have you
I
guys?
have not.
No, and
I did, but,
okay,
but I'm by myself now.
gotcha.
So we'll just make it next time.
Yes, I think we'll have to table it till next time. Have not had a
Okay.
chance to review them yet. Is that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Did we end up with that?
I
Yes.
just wanna take
There
a
you go.
photo.
Yeah, we can make a copy if you would.
Yeah, I can give that back to you in a day or so, I just wanna,
No, it's totally fine. I'll just take a photo. So
Great.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, see you.
Okay, so on that note, I'd like to, we'll be tabling the minutes for approval to the next meeting. And I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. It is 7:26.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.